I think a lot of entrepreneurs get into entrepreneurship to scratch their own itch. So they have a personal issue or personal problem or professional problem, and then they try to solve it for themselves and stumble onto a business model that other people have that same problem and they're willing to pay money for that problem to be solved.
All right, it's time for our favorite podcast, Cut to the Chase. Are you a small business owner or an entrepreneur and you're doing great work, or maybe even in the nonprofit space, doing great work, you're marketing crazy, your employees are killing it. You look at the bank account, you know money's coming in, and then you look at the bank account and you're like, where to go? And I'm going to tell you, you might be running a small business, but that doesn't make you financially savvy. And a lot of us now are seeing fractional CFOs, and what are they? Can they help? Are they good for us? So I brought on Robert Sepulveda, local guy, South Florida guy. He's a founder of XPLR, but it's XPLR Financial Services. They provide a whole host of fractional services, CFO fractional services, and he also does a lot of coaching. And he has an interesting setup for the coaching, which we're going to go over. How are you doing? I know that was a mouthful, Robert, but I got to get that all in.
No, I love it. I'm excited to be here, Greg. Thank you for having me on.
All right. I know you're in Colombia right now, and your wife is going to go run a marathon in London after that. So exciting times for you guys. Good luck for her. All right. So first of all, let's talk about the coaching. I know you integrate coaching in a way that's a little different than most people that provide coaching, where you kind of integrate the personal and professional aspect of the people that tell us how do you differ and what's your approach than all the other coaches on the market?
Yeah, so I come from a finance background, and most of my clients, I help them organize their financial structures. They're business owners, so they're really focused on domain of expertise, and organization of finance usually isn't one of them. So I usually started from that perspective. But the more and more I work with entrepreneurs, I found that they're really the edge that they're playing at were like personal issues that would blend into their business. So that's when I started coaching them a little bit more and leadership development, just how do you actually set up yourself for success, both personally and professionally. And the numbers behind it just kind of tells a story of what's actually happening in a person's life or their business life. So that's why we kind of focus more on the personal growth, where the philosophy that I kind of work under is that the business that you're able to create is a direct reflection of the person you are. So that's why we try to focus on the individual person, set them up for success so that they're successful both in their business and personal lives.
All right. So, some people out there might be saying, yeah, I'm not sure that this is for me, but give a couple examples of how someone's personal life is kind of, I guess, it become part of their business in a way where coaching and incorporating their personal situation becomes, effective from your end.
Yeah, I think it comes down to how a person shows up in their life. And if they're mentally afflicted by something that's really hard in their personal life or in their personal relationship or their personal finances, it kind of transfers over into the relationships they build professionally. Usually, we try to create that line of separation, and legally and financially, it's very easy to create that line. But emotionally and just in everyday life, it kind of blends all together, and it's really hard to separate the two on a day-to-day interaction from experience to experience. So it kind of always blends over, whether you're having issues with your children or with the personal friend, and you kind of take it out with in a conversation that you have with somebody professionally. It just always carries over. You're always at the center of everything that you're doing.
Yeah. Now, do you find that I'm almost kind of laughing at this? Everybody that you deal with in the coaching space, to some degree, has some of their personal life blend in with their business in a way which is not necessarily productive or beneficial.
I think it's both sides. Sometimes it's very productive and sometimes it's anti-productive. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs get into entrepreneurship to scratch their own itch. So they have a personal issue or personal problem or professional problem, and then they try to solve it for themselves and stumble onto a business model that other people have that same problem and they're willing to pay money for that problem to be solved. So it kind of always starts from that, or not always, but usually starts from that personal challenge that somebody's facing and wanting to find a solution for it for themselves, and then creating a business around it. Yeah, so that kind of blends the both worlds in the business and professional side with the challenges that come up.
All right, so I know you have one-on-one coaching and you have a men's group, it sounds like. And then you also have a male and female group, a mastermind group. So why don't you go through the different types of groups that you have for coaching and, which, will you go ahead and explain the three?
Yeah, so when I was working with mostly entrepreneurs, a lot of them were men. And I found, like I mentioned before, a lot of their challenges that they pushed up against their edge were more personal driven than business driven. And that's when I started the weekly men's circles, so that there's a space for men to come together to talk about their challenges and realize that they're not facing those challenges alone. You're not the only one in the boat. You're not the only one experiencing the storm. And finding that commonality between each other kind of released a lot of the challenges that they face in their business life. For the business mastermind circles, it's been more focused around conversations around business and with the challenges that have come into play in the business world. And those are more geared toward people that don't really want to talk about their personal lives, but they talk about it in direct ways in the situation that arises in the business, whether it's a frustration with their co-founder and they're having co-founder conflicts and contract agreements, setting boundaries with vendors or clients. It kind of comes up in multiple ways in the businesses that we create, that it really comes down to interpersonal skills, how we deal with people, and businesses are just collections of people. So how we deal with people in our personal lives kind of reflect how we deal with people in our business lives. So it kind of focuses on how do we treat and work with people in a better way.
Do you see that women are facing substantially different issues in your context in the coaching world than men, or is it pretty consistent?
Well, it's the same in the sense that everybody faces human issues. We're all human at the end of the day. We all kind of face a similar challenge. But I think the main difference is the perspective. Women have a very different perspective on life than men do. And I think that commonality of men sharing the same perspective and being in the same room with each other so that they could have that commonality, while women view life a little bit differently, that's where the differences really shine. But when we're trying to create a business, which is we kind of face the same challenges. It's creating something outside of ourselves. We come up against the economy, come up against different momentums, different challenges, different opportunities. So the approach to creating something in the world, it's somewhat similar. So there, it's the same set of problems, but the way the perspective of those problems is different between men and women. So the way we speak about those problems can be different.
Do you see sort of a common issue that a lot of people are dealing with that they don't realize, and maybe even they balk at when you say, hey, you got to deal with something like this, you don't even realize it's affecting your business?
The most common things that people don't realize that's happening is just habitual patterns in their life, and unaddressed issues as well too. Childhood issues become adult issues. Family issues, like the family you're born into creates some issues or different sets of issues of the family that you create. So it's intergenerational things that happen just based on what we've experienced growing up. And that's one thing that's a highlight in terms of our clients and how they create awareness around what's actually happening and why things happen in their lives the way that they do. But it differs for person to person, depending on their family, depending on their upbringing, depending on their school system, depending on their group of friends, depending where they started working. So it's a whole array of different experiences, but those habitual patterns is what kind of keeps us stuck in what we've experienced over and over and over in our life.
Is there a typical problem that people are having that you are very effective at addressing? I mean, I got to imagine some people are coming in with problems where you're like, whoa, this is beyond my skill set. Nobody can help you out, buddy. But,
Yeah.
what are the, like, if somebody's out there listening, what would be like your avatar clients in terms of success rate?
Yeah, so my skill set is really in organization and pattern recognition. So I'm able to see things from a third party perspective with a clear view and see the patterns that happen over and over again that the entrepreneur may not see. Organization as well too. A lot of entrepreneurs are kind of they're in an organized chaos that only they could decipher. So organizing things that other people could easily understand is one of my strong suits as well. That's why I kind of lean on the financial planning side and the financial organization, and then understanding the patterns and the story behind the numbers, and then speaking to the actual entrepreneur and uncovering patterns that happen in their life and how to organize it differently so that the patterns and don't repeat themselves. Or there's patterns that we do want to repeat themselves and organize it in a way so that it happens more naturally. So that pattern recognition and just organizational structure. And then with the coaching side, we talk a lot about operations. So it's not just about numbers. It's what is happening on a daily basis, what's happening on a weekly basis, monthly, quarterly, yearly, and what are the things that should be in place on a regular basis, on a repeatable basis, in order to scale properly. Because if not, just with growth, what happens is that it's just more and more chaotic and it gets to a point that the capacity of the person just it grows beyond their capacity. So it's just trying to juggle too much, and then that's when everything kind of falls and breaks down. So I come into play to create those structures that need to be in place in order for things not to break down, so that they're able to scale peacefully and without the headache and stress.
Good word. I love it. All right, tell me a little bit about the one-on-one coaching. And is that really more like looking under the financial hood or are you still focusing on, the personality and things of that
So
nature?
it depends on the individual person and what their actual goals are. Because I believe everybody is at a certain point in their life or and right now in this moment, there's where they are. And then there's this future vision of themselves, either professionally, financially, personally, that they want to create in their life. And bridging that gap is kind of where I come into play. And what is the organization and the structure and what needs to be focused on in order to reduce that gap between where they are and where they want to be. So whether it's financial organization, professional relationships and professional leadership, or is it personal things that they really need to uncover and address? That's where I kind of come into play. And as a coach, I always look forward as to like from where they are and where they want to be. So I'm always looking forward as to, okay, you want to be in this space in the future. So this is what you need to focus on today. I don't really get into the past and more therapeutic work. That's more like if they do need a therapist to kind of uncover generational things that they deal with their parents or with their family or with their situation growing up. That's where more professional intervention might be more appropriate so that they could dive into why they show up the way they show up today.
Gotcha. All right. So why don't you give me a little bit of your background and also talk about Explore, the team, how long they've been in business?
Yeah. Yeah, so I have a background in financial. I actually worked my way up in banking to private wealth management. Started working right after university. I went to FIU. I grew up here in Miami, Florida, and started working at Regions Bank, worked my way up into private wealth, and then moved over to Stonegate Bank, which is now Centennial Bank. And there we actually started the bank in Miami market. We opened 3 branches, and that was like my first experience in startups, like really starting something from the ground up. So that was really great. And I was a CFP, certified financial planner, and most of my clients were entrepreneurs. And I focused on having the hard conversations about business succession planning and estate planning. So what are they building and how can they remove themselves from the business without letting it collapse? And so it could live on beyond them being involved in the business. And then estate planning, how to preserve everything that they built in a lifetime for the next generation. Because a lot of it, to be frank, we build all these things for our families. So how can we preserve it to build our legacy and to leave something behind? So that's kind of where I started off. And I did that for almost a decade. And it was really fulfilling to help other people. But at one point, I wanted to sit on the other side of the table. I wanted to be an entrepreneur instead of the banker. And that's when I left finance and I actually lived in Singapore for about 4 years. I moved across the world on the other side of the world and really got involved in early stage startups. I started to speak to early stage entrepreneurs, trying to help them get their head out of the clouds because every entrepreneur starts very ambitious, but keep their feet on the ground and focus on what actually needs to get done in order to create that vision day after day, week after week, month after month, and just how to be able to speak about it in a clear way so others can understand them. So I worked in Singapore for about 4 years, a little under 4 years, 3.5 years. And then I actually wanted to, another change in my life, move to Thailand. So I lived in Thailand for about a year working with digital nomads. This was before remote work was really big and apparent. This was back in 2016. So I heard about a community of digital nomads, people working online, building businesses. So I wanted to check that out and met a lot of entrepreneurs, met a lot of people, understood their issues, and it was completely different than the in-person experience. And then moved back to the US in 2018. And that's when I started the fractional CFO. I got back into finance. People kept asking me for help with their finances. So I got back into that. And since then, we built a team of CPAs, bookkeepers, and tax preparers to kind of help with the organizational structure behind building a company. So formation and what type of accounts and how to set things up and the QuickBooks management and organizing all of the financial statements so that everything's organized and you can see your numbers clearly. That's kind of where we started. But the more and more we worked with them, I just saw the bigger need for the coaching and the guidance and the advisory services. So that's where we kind of blended it more beyond the numbers into the more coaching and guidance through the whole entrepreneurship journey.
Okay, so people have heard of fractional CFO. What is that? And give me your big pitch. Why would I want a fractional CFO? Who needs fractional CFOs? Or is this just startups? Take the floor.
So small business owners that aren't ready to scale everything in-house is where fractional CFO really comes into play. For a fraction of the cost, you get an entire team behind you instead of trying to build the whole team internally. And we kind of guide it based on our expertise, on our knowledge, our wide range of clients, in order to help you scale and give you the peace of mind you need when dealing with your finances so that you could focus on what matters most and what you're best at, which is building your business, selling your products, or whatever it is that you're doing in your business. And we kind of create that peace of mind that everything is being handled on the back end. When tax season comes around, everything's organized and ready. We remove the stress that's really stress inducing, especially around dealing with the IRS. So we kind of create that peace of mind in order for the entrepreneur to feel clear and confident with what they're building and the organization behind the scenes. So that's basically the fractional CFO services is creating peace of mind and the financial organization of things.
Gotcha. All right. So that like it includes even bookkeeping, like from ground up, not just the
Yeah,
like, hey, here's how you get from A to B and all that. So
yeah.
what,
Organization on a monthly basis, the financial statements on a monthly basis, the quarterly reports, the month-to-month comparison, kind of seeing the trends inside of your business. Because most of the time, entrepreneurs, they're doing a lot of businesses, but they don't know where all the money is going. It's not very clear, it's not transparent. So we create that transparency so the business owner knows what's actually happening inside their business.
All right, give me the three things that you see most frequently in terms of businesses just pissing away money. Where are they pissing away and they don't even realize it?
Yeah, it's first is the organization of things. They just don't know where the money's going. They're spending more on marketing than they realize. Their cost of acquisition isn't very clear. They're just spending money and hoping that it creates revenue. So having that clear cost of acquisition is probably the biggest one. How
Yeah,
much does it cost to get one client? And how much are you willing to spend to gain that client? Another one that there is not very clear is lifetime value of customers. Who are your most profitable clients? Who are your less profitable clients? And then this kind of ties into the time you spend on each client. And sometimes your more profitable clients are less time consuming, while your least profitable clients are more time consuming.
yeah,
So understanding who your target demographic is and who you want to serve is a really big eye opener for a lot of entrepreneurs as well too.
yeah. And I would imagine that a lot of people out there have no idea how to calculate the cost of acquiring a client. Like
Yeah.
they're just hearing that, they're like, what are you talking about? How is that possible? All right. So where do you see things going in your world? In the entrepreneur that needs coaching or fractional CFO or the small business, where do you see things? I mean, artificial intelligence, everybody's heard about artificial intelligence. I don't even know if anybody even realizes how to use it, but everybody's reading, oh, I got to do it, I got to do it. But where do you see things going? Are things going to change dramatically in your space, or do you think it's going to be just a pretty much gradual, normal change?
I think everything's changing. It's something I say the only constant in life is change. So you're either changing with times or you're fighting against it, and things just change for you. And AI is a huge part of the future. And there's a lot of people that are leaning more into the entrepreneurship space, creating something of their own instead of relying on these big companies in order to just receive a paycheck. A lot of people are kind of tired of what they've been doing their whole lives and want to have more autonomy over their time. And that's the huge shift I'm seeing in society. People wanting to own more of their time for themselves,
Yeah,
as opposed to serving for a company for 5, 10, 15 years, that could drop you at any given time. Even with a lot of the situations that's happening in the government, just a lot of people are getting laid off. So relying on other people is something that they don't want to do anymore. And with the emerging of AI, it's kind of intelligence on subscription. You're able to speak to something very clearly and organize your thoughts, and it helps you very rapidly do things in a very short amount of time. But I think the edge is still on execution, executing on the ideas and how to actually execute it so it's sustainable over time is still the challenge. So more and more, it's still relying heavily on people to execute and to execute the right things because computers might execute things the wrong things or in the wrong manner, and you just don't know it until there's human eyes looking at it to recognize the issue that's happening. So I feel like there's a lot more symbiotic relationships with AI, and people that know how to use AI properly are going to get ahead, just because it makes you a more efficient worker or a more efficient entrepreneur. It makes you sharper. It refines a lot of the edges that you might not be sharp in. So just having that tool in your tool belt, it's an added benefit for you and an advantage for that business owner. The issue around AI is a lot of privacy issues as well too. What you feed it is important, and how you feed the prompting is also important. So knowing what information to give and what information to not give it is also important. And that I think is an edge that everybody's still trying to figure out and learn about. And privacy issues is a really big thing.
yeah. I get the sense that the privacy matters are going to be exponentially more on people's plate, with what's going on right now. But all right, so one thing that I didn't touch base on, and a topic that's sort of near and dear to my heart, is I see you do work for nonprofits. So talk about that. Is that both coaching and the CFO, the fractional CFO services?
Yeah, so nonprofits are close to my heart as well too. I've been involved in nonprofits since I guess college days, and just giving back to society and just helping them grow and forward a mission. So we do the fractional CFO work for the nonprofits. And one of the things that I notice most with nonprofits is that they try to operate in a different form. And the clarity that I've noticed or I've gained over the years is that nonprofits aren't very different than a for-profit business. There's the only difference is how the IRS treats them,
Yeah.
but everything else is the same, and it needs to be built in a way that's sustainable, that has revenue coming in, whether it's through donations or selling of services or selling of products. What is it that the nonprofit actually does? How does it generate the revenue in order to be sustainable in the long run? And a lot of nonprofit founders are they have their heart in the right place, but the business savviness of it isn't really there yet. And that's where kind of the business coaching really comes into play, because you have to be as ruthless as the in the for-profit world as the nonprofit world, because the competition is even higher. And the perception of nonprofits is very different. The perception is that, oh, it's a nonprofit, you're not making any money, so everything should be free. And that's not always the case, because nonprofits go out of business all the time because of that, is not able to generate revenue.
Yeah.
So understanding what's the market that you're trying to fill and serve, and how do you actually serve it in a sustainable way over time, is one of the biggest challenges I find nonprofits facing.
Yeah. And also, I think the changing times, if you're a nonprofit and you're government funded, you got to, you better have a meeting with your board of directors and figure out, a way to go forward if that thing dries up. And our last question, let's go. I want to end up with the startups. I know I said the nonprofits were going to be the end, but it's my show, so um, startup. You get Everybody wants to be a startup. They want to be a serial entrepreneur. They got a great idea. They got no money. When should they call you? Should they start it up and have some successes and failures and then show you, some of their history? Is that better, more effective? Or are they better off coming to you when they first come up with their brilliant idea?
I think calling now is the best answer to that. Wherever you are, we have something to help you. And that's why we started the business mastermind groups. It's more peer-led support groups, and that you could be with other people at different stages of their career, their business building. And even if you're in the ideation station or ideation phase, you're able to view things in a different light in order to build a sustainable business in the future. And startups is interesting because you're trying to sell two products at the same time. And one is one product that's facing the public, and what's the service and what's the product that you're actually selling and charging for. And the other side is you're selling the actual business and pieces of the business to investors and whatnot. So you're targeting two separate target demographics, two customer base, your public customers who you serve, and your private investors that invest in the company. But how you actually speak about the same problem to both different parties will be completely different. So finding that clarity around your messaging, what you're trying to accomplish, and how do you get that across to people is probably one of the hardest thing for startups to do at the early stages.
Yeah.
And then when they're growing, organization is really important. Back to organization. How do you organize things for the investors so that they could see clearly what's happening in the background? And then operationally, how do you organize things for the customers so that their onboarding is good, their experience is good, so you don't have churn and like everybody keeps falling off after just using your product the first month. You want to increase that lifetime value for your customers, because that's what's going to increase both the value that is perceived value from your customer base and the perceived value of the business that you're selling to the investors. So it's kind of a double-edged sword that you're trying to accomplish a lot more. So it's a lot more difficult in the startup world than trying to just build a business from scratch.
Yeah, no, the success rate on startups is not that high, but if you make it, it's great. All right, so I think that's going to do it. If anybody out there is like, wow, this sounds really interesting, or maybe it sounds interesting, what's the best way to get in touch with you, Robert?
Yeah, so my website is for the financial services, explore, expplr.co. And for the business mastermind groups is explore.org, expplr.org. Those are the best two ways to get in contact with me. And for the men's circles, it's pretty straightforward, just weeklymenscircle.com. And yeah, I think there's a service for everybody.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Cut to the Chase with Robert Sepulveda, who's here to help you make your realities come true. Listen, maybe you don't even realize that your personal issues are completely interrupting your business, and that's not good. It's like a boomerang, so now the business is going bad. That's going to kick back to your personal life. So you know what? Maybe you need to talk to Robert, get things straightened out. It's a more of a holistic approach, which I hate to tell you, folks, it's hard to separate your personality from your business. So, get a grip on that. Robert's here to help. Smash the like button. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. You can leave comments on my YouTube page. Robert, have fun. Good luck with your wife. I hope she breaks that 2 hour and 4 minute mark. Is that where we're at in the marathon?
She's at 3:30. 3:30.
All right. Well, she's gonna break 3:25. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Otherwise, she's not coming back. All right, Robert, take care of yourself, and that'll do it.
Thank you so much, Greg. It was a pleasure being here.
That's all for this episode of Cut to the Chase. But before you go, will you open up your podcast app and give us a 5-star review? You can also leave a comment about what you liked most or other topics you'd like us to cover. And please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming shows. Thanks, everybody. Be safe out there.